You already have a 40% office vacancy rate here in New York City. What are we going to do with these vacant offices? Well, they're talking about maybe we can rent it out as luxury property. Well, the problem is that these offices aren't very good for residential property. How are you going to do your grocery shopping? You know, if you live in a nice Wall Street building. And what are you going to do for air conditioning? And what are you going to do for light? There are going to be a lot of rooms that don't have any light in them. What are you going to do for these? So, the Financial Times on Friday just had a similar discussion about their financial city that the Reichmans developed 30 or 40 years ago. The financial buildings that had banks, now that England has taken itself out of the Eurozone, are largely vacant. And well, maybe we can rent them out. There's a housing shortage in London. Look at all the advantages of the financial area there. There were government spent a lot of money with the Jubilee line making extensions. You can get to it easily. But again, it's a desert. Doesn't feel like a neighborhood. There are no stores the buildings are not designed to have stores on the ground floor like you work down Queens Boulevard. You know, they're coffee shops, they're grocery stores, they're shoe stores. How are you going to make buildings that just have big lobbies to impress you when you go into an office building? How are you going to make that into a shoe store, a drugstore, you know, or a coffee shop? How are you going to handle the air conditioning when you not only have COVID spreading, but you have all these new diseases that are spreading from cattle, and you have bird flu, you have cattle flu, you have all of these things that are developing. You need to re-engineer all the buildings. A lot of developers saying, well, you know, it's really cheaper to tear them all down and begin all over again. And there's a discussion that from England and the Financial Times to the United States, it may be easier for American listeners to understand it when it's in a foreign country than they can understand it here, because they don't like to hear bad news about America. So if we're talking about England, you know, they're describing, you know, what are we going to do with all of these office buildings that now are not occupied now that we're deindustrializing? If you want to see where American capitalism is leading, look at what Margaret Thatcher did to England. That's libertarian. That's the Republican policy. Let's have a low state. Let's get rid of the state. It's the road to serfdom, as Hayek said, and as Margaret Thatcher said. We won't have any government ability to regulate the economy. And the Supreme Court, as you know, a few months ago said government agencies can no longer impose regulations on companies. That the regulations will have to be passed by Congress. Agencies have no power at all to regulate the economy with professionals. It has to be the politicians whose campaigns are paid for by the donors, who from the very class that the politicians used to be able to regulate, but now they can't appoint regulators to do it, and they follow the deregulators who pay for their political campaigns. So getting rid of permitting campaign finance of the donor class is another reason why the American empire is going under. If you have politicians who are following the rules set by the donor class, both the Republicans and the Democrats often have the same donors, certainly from the same industries. The automatic intelligence industry, the military-industrial complex, especially the oil industry, big agriculture. If you have these companies financing politics, then you're not going to have politicians backing prosperity for the 99%. They're going to back prosperity for the 1% of the monopolists or the financiers or the rent extractors that are their campaign contributors. And so you have the political system as part of this tunnel vision that, as Richard and I have just been saying, have led to this inability to understand the laws of motion of where the American economy is going, where finance capitalism is going, and where America's role in the world is relative where other countries have the option of going. And your only hope is that other countries are just as unrealistic, that they don't know what to do either, that they have been so used to the following the American plan that made it dominant a century ago that they don't realize that we're no longer a century ago. We're no longer in the post-World War I world, a completely different world, and it seems that the whole world is operating with a tunnel vision in the dark. That's what's so ironic about all this. We materialists think that people are going, and countries are going to act in their own self-interest. But neither the United States nor the other countries are acting in their self-interest. How on earth do you project what countries are going to do if they don't know what their self-interest is? That's what makes being a futurist so difficult. In the past, it was easy to be a futurist back in the 1970s. Alvin Toffler, Herman Kahn, and I, we used to talk together all the time. We'd all pretty much agree. Well, here are the interests of industry, here's the interest of oil, here's the interest of military. We could see what the interests were, and you just forecast. Here's what German interest is going to be, English. You can't do that anymore because nobody knows what their interests are, and they're all flailing. That's the problem that you have. How do you forecast what countries are going to do when their leaders don't know what they're doing and don't know what their advantage is? You can no longer think what's reasonable for them to do because they don't know what's reasonable, because they don't have a way of thinking about what's reasonable or what their interest is.